The sky over Greenhaven bled orange and pink as the sun set through the polluted atmosphere. Dr. Min An stood at the window of her new laboratory, watching particles of dust dance in the fading light. Outside, the reinforced glass, the last protected forest on Earth, stretched before her, an artificial paradise surrounded by wasteland. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said behind her. "The last glimpse of what we're fighting to preserve." Min An turned to face Professor Hong Kai, the founder and director of the Environmental Evolution Institute. His tall, thin frame was silhouetted against the laboratory's sterile white walls, his silver hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "It feels strange," she admitted, "to see so much green when the rest of the world has turned to dust." "That's why your work here matters. Dr. An." Hong Kai approached, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor. "Your expertise in evolutionary biology is exactly what we need to ensure humanity's survival." Min An nodded, though unease stirred within her. She had been recruited to Greenhaven a month ago, her reputation as a leading geneticist preceding her. The promise of continuing her research with unlimited resources had been too tempting to resist. "The replacement plan is entering its crucial phase," Hong Kai continued. "Tomorrow, you'll get full access to Project Obsolete." "I still don't understand why the project needs such secrecy," Min An said, watching his face carefully. "If we're developing hardier crops and resistant human genes, shouldn't people know?" Hong Kai's thin lips formed a tight smile. "People fear what they don't understand. The masses aren't ready for the truth about what survival truly requires." "And what truth is that?" "You'll see tomorrow." He gestured toward the door. "Get some rest. The future of our species awaits your guidance." After he left, Min An stayed by the window, watching darkness descend over Greenhaven. Beyond the protective dome that covered the oasis, distant fires burned in what remained of the city. The outsiders, those not fortunate enough to be selected for the protected zones, struggled for survival in a world of toxic air and barren soil. Her tablet beeped with a message from Mai Lan, her old friend from high school now working as an investigative journalist. "Are you settling in? People are talking about massive recruitment to the green zones. Something big is happening. Be careful." Min An frowned. The message carried a warning. But what did Mai Lan know? She typed a brief reply. "All fine, just research. We'll call soon." But even as she sent it, doubt nagged at her. What exactly had she signed up for? The next morning, Min An descended to the subterranean levels of the Institute. Her security clearance opened doors that hadn't been accessible before, taking her deeper into the complex than she'd been permitted to venture during her first month. Level B5 was different. The walls were reinforced with some kind of metallic compound, and the air smelled of antiseptic and something else. Something organic and unfamiliar. "Dr. An, welcome to Project Obsolete." Dr. Elena Duong met her at the final security checkpoint, her dark eyes evaluating Min An through rimless glasses. "Professor Hong Kai speaks highly of your work on adaptive genetic structures." "Thank you," Min An replied, following Elena through the final set of doors. "I'm eager to see what—" The words died in her throat as they entered a vast circular chamber. Along the walls, dozens of transparent pods contained human-shaped figures, but they weren't quite human. Their skin had a faint bluish tint, their limbs slightly elongated. Some appeared to have additional appendages or organs visible beneath translucent skin. All were connected to monitoring systems that beeped and hummed in rhythmic concert. "What is this?" Min An whispered, horror and fascination battling within her. "The next step in human evolution," Elena replied, pride evident in her voice. "Post-humans, genetically engineered to survive the world we've destroyed, enhanced respiratory systems to filter toxins, reinforced skeletal structures, improved neural networks, and regenerative capabilities far beyond our own." Min An approached one of the pods, where a male figure floated in clear fluid. "You're creating a new species?" "We're ensuring our legacy," Elena corrected. "Conventional humans can't survive what's coming. Even here in Greenhaven, we're just postponing the inevitable. But these," she gestured around the room, "these can thrive in the new world." "Does the world government know about this?" Elena's laugh was bitter. "The world government is funding it. The mega-corporations are fighting over who gets to claim the patents. Everyone who matters knows that conventional humanity is obsolete." A technician approached them, nervously clutching a tablet. "Dr. Duong, Pod 17 is showing increased neural activity again. The subject is attempting to communicate." Elena frowned. "Sedate it. We're not ready for awakening yet." The technician hesitated. "We've already increased the dosage 3 times. It's developing resistance." "Then double it again," Elena snapped. "We can't risk premature consciousness." As the technician hurried away, Min-an studied Elena's face. "You're afraid of them." "Not afraid, cautious. Their cognitive capabilities are designed to surpass ours. We need to ensure proper control mechanisms before full activation." A sudden commotion erupted across the chamber. Alarms blared as a pod's glass cracked with a spiderweb pattern. The fluid within bubbled violently. "Containment breach in Pod 17, someone shouted. "Lockdown protocol," Elena commanded, rushing toward the disturbance. Min-an followed, watching in horror as the glass shattered completely. Fluid gushed across the floor as a post-human male emerged, skin gleaming wet, eyes unnaturally bright. Before anyone could react, it seized the nearest technician by the throat. "Why?" The word emerged from its mouth in a rasp, vocal cords unused to speech. "Why cage? Why pain?" Security personnel rushed in with electrified prods, surrounding the creature. The post-human's grip tightened on the technician, who was turning blue. "Stand down!" Elena shouted. "You're malfunctioning! Release him!" The creature's gaze found Min-an, who stood transfixed at the edge of the chaos. Something in those eyes, intelligence, fear, rage, struck her with the force of recognition. This wasn't a malfunctioning experiment. This was a sentient being in pain. "Stop!" Min-an stepped forward. "You're hurting him. He can't breathe." The creature tilted its head, studying her. Slowly, it released the technician, who collapsed gasping to the floor. "Different," it said, pointing at Min-an. "You... different." Before she could respond, security personnel discharged their weapons. Electricity arced through the air, striking the post-human. It convulsed violently before collapsing to the ground, where they continued to shock it until it lay still. "Get the backup containment unit," Elena ordered, then turned to Min-an with a tight expression. "First rule of Project Obsolete. Dr. Ann, never humanize the specimens. They're not people. They're the replacement for people." As they dragged the unconscious post-human away, Min-an felt a chill that had nothing to do with the laboratory's temperature. The creature had recognized something in her that the others lacked. Compassion? Fear? Whatever it was, in that moment, she understood the true nature of Project Obsolete. They weren't preserving humanity's legacy. They were engineering its replacement. And she was now complicit. That night, Min-an couldn't sleep. The post-human's eyes haunted her, the intelligence there, the suffering. She paced her apartment, the sterile white walls of the Greenhaven residential complex closing in around her. Her tablet beeped with an incoming message from Milan. Government announced humanitarian relocation of 10,000 outsiders to Green Island next month. Sources say they'll never return. What's happening in there? Min-an stared at the message, her hands trembling. Green Island was the remote facility where the Institute sent its completed projects. If they were bringing in thousands of outsiders, they weren't test subjects. They were raw material. She had to know more. Using her new security clearance, She accessed the Institute's database from her tablet. Most files were still restricted, but she found fragments, research papers, progress reports, communications between Hong Kai and government officials. The pieces began to form a horrifying picture. Project Obsolete wasn't just creating a few enhanced humans. It was planning a complete replacement. The post-humans were designed not only to survive in the deteriorating environment, but to hasten humanity's extinction through engineered pathogens that would only affect conventional humans. Her hands shaking, she sent Milan a cryptic message. Need to meet. Not secure here. Old spot. 3 days. The next morning, Min-an returned to the laboratory with new eyes. Every smile seemed sinister. Every friendly greeting a potential threat. She forced herself to work normally, to ask the expected questions, to express the appropriate enthusiasm for the breakthrough research. "You seem troubled, Dr. An," Hong Kai commented during the afternoon briefing. "Is something bothering you about the project?" She kept her face neutral. "Just processing everything. The scale is overwhelming." "Indeed. We're rewriting the future of life on Earth." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your contribution will be remembered long after conventional humans are gone." "That's what concerns me," she replied carefully. "How much of us will remain in them? What makes us human beyond our DNA?" Hong Kai's eyes narrowed slightly. "An interesting philosophical question, but ultimately irrelevant. Evolution doesn't preserve the past. It selects for survival." He removed his hand. "I've scheduled you for the genetics lab tomorrow. Dr. Duong will show you how we're enhancing emotional suppression in the new variants." "Emotional suppression?" "Of course. Emotions are evolutionary baggage, useful for primitive survival, but counterproductive for the optimization we seek." He smiled thinly. "You'll understand better tomorrow." That night, Min-an made her decision. She couldn't be part of this. Somehow, she had to gather evidence and get it to the outside world. But first, she needed to understand exactly what they were creating and how to stop it. 3 days later, Min-an slipped away during her lunch break. Security at Green Haven was tight, but as a high-clearance researcher, she had certain privileges, including short excursions to the outer perimeter of the oasis. The border between Green Haven and the outside world was stark, lush engineered vegetation giving way to cracked earth and stunted, mutated plants. The air immediately felt thicker, carrying the bitter taste of industrial chemicals and dust. A figure waited in the shadow of a ruined building, Mai Lan, wearing the patchwork protective clothing of the outsiders, her face partially concealed by a filtering mask. "Min," she said, embracing her friend briefly. "You look terrible." "I haven't been sleeping." Min-an glanced nervously over her shoulder. "We don't have much time." "What's happening in there?" "The official channels are full of propaganda about humanitarian relief and ecological renewal. But people are disappearing." Min-an took a deep breath. "They're creating a new species. Post-humans engineered to replace us. The Green Island relocation is—" she struggled to say it. "They're harvesting genetic material, test subjects. The people won't be coming back." Mylan's eyes widened above her mask. "I knew something was wrong, but this—" She pulled out a small recording device. "Tell me everything." Min-an spoke quickly, detailing what she'd seen and learned. The post-humans, the genetic modifications, the planned pathogen release, the government's involvement. "I need evidence," Mylan said when she finished. "Something I can broadcast. My words won't be enough. They'll call me a conspiracy theorist." "I'll try to get files, but security is tight. They're watching me already, I can feel it. Be careful. The resistance network can help if you need extraction." Min-an shook her head. "Not yet. I need to learn more, find a weakness, something that can stop this." "Don't wait too long," Mylan warned. "Once those relocations start next month, it might be too late." They parted ways, Minon returning to Greenhaven with renewed determination. She would find the evidence they needed, no matter the cost. Over the next week, Mignon worked diligently in the genetics lab, gaining Elena Duong's trust while secretly documenting everything she saw. The post-humans were even more advanced than she'd initially realized. Their DNA contained synthetic elements that allowed rapid adaptation to environmental changes. Their neural networks were enhanced with organic computing capabilities, and they possessed a hive mind potential that could eventually allow instantaneous communication across vast distances. Most disturbing was the emotional engineering. The post-humans were designed to experience only a narrow range of emotions, primarily those that served survival and advancement. Empathy, compassion, and love were being systematically eliminated from their emotional repertoire. "We're removing the weaknesses that led humanity to this precipice," Elena explained during one session. Emotional attachment to individuals, to places, to the past. These are evolutionary anchors that prevented necessary adaptation. But as Minon observed the subjects, she noticed something unexpected. Despite the genetic modifications, some post-humans showed signs of developing emotional responses beyond their programming. Pod 17 subject, now heavily sedated and restrained, had recognized her on subsequent visits, tracking her movements with intelligent eyes that held more than mere calculation. One evening, working late, she found Elena staring at the same subject, her expression troubled. "Something's bothering you about 17, Minon ventured. Elena startled slightly. "I didn't hear you come in," she hesitated, then admitted. "He's developing faster than the others, showing signs of self-awareness, emotional complexity. It shouldn't be possible with the inhibitors we've installed. Perhaps emotion is more fundamental to consciousness than we realize. Perhaps," Elena looked at her sharply. "But if that's true, we're creating monsters, not saviors. Beings with superhuman capabilities and human emotions, including rage, jealousy, vengeance. Is that what you're afraid of? That they'll turn on their creators? Wouldn't you, in their position," Elena whispered, "created to replace, contained, experimented upon?" The admission hung in the air between them. For the first time, Minon wondered if Elena might not be as committed to the project as she appeared. "What if we're wrong?" Minon asked softly. "What if humanity deserves a chance to save itself?" Elena's face closed off. "It's too late for that. The decisions have been made at levels far above us." She turned away. "You should go home, Dr. Anne. It's getting late." But instead of leaving, Minon waited until Elena had gone, then used her access card to enter the restricted data center. She had precious little time. The security systems would detect unauthorized access within minutes. Working quickly, she located the core files of Project Obsolete and began copying them to a secure drive. Project plans, genetic sequences, communications between the Institute and government officials, everything she could find about the post-humans and the planned extinction of conventional humanity. A file labeled Genesis Protocol caught her attention. Opening it, she found herself looking at her own genetic profile, alongside those of other researchers. With growing horror, she realized the post-humans carried genetic material from the scientists who created them, a bizarre form of intellectual inheritance. But there was more. Another file contained embryonic records, including one labeled MA01 that contained unmistakable markers of her own DNA. With trembling hands, she opened the file. The truth hit her like a physical blow. Years ago, she had lost a child in the second trimester, a daughter, taken by one of the new environmental toxins that caused widespread reproductive failure. The Institute had somehow obtained samples from that lost pregnancy and used them in creating the first post-human prototype. Pod 17, the one that had recognized her. The one that had asked, why? Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Min-an quickly finished the download and slipped the drive into her pocket, heart pounding. She had just closed the terminal when the door opened and Hong Kai entered, flanked by security personnel. "Dr. An," he said, his voice cold. "Working late, I see." "Just familiarizing myself with the project history," she replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Indeed." His eyes flickered to the terminal she'd been using. Security reported unauthorized access to restricted files. Files about our Genesis protocol. She felt the blood drain from her face. "I'm cleared for genetics research. I was following a thread about adaptive mutations." "Don't insult my intelligence." Hong Kai nodded to the security personnel. "Search her." They found the drive immediately. Hong Kai held it up, studying it with cold fury. "Betrayal carries severe consequences, Dr. An, especially when humanity's future hangs in the balance. What you're doing isn't saving humanity. It's murdering it, replacing it with something else entirely. Evolution has always worked that way. The unfit perish, the adapted survive." He pocketed the drive. "Take her to containment, level B7. As they dragged her away, Min-an shouted, "They'll develop emotions just like us. You can't engineer that away. You're creating your own destruction." Hong Kai's face remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or fear that she might be right. B7 was worse than she had imagined. Not a prison cell, but a laboratory, one designed for human experimentation. Other detainees were there, strapped to tables or confined in glass observation chambers. Some were clearly outsiders, brought in early for the relocation program. Others were institute staff, who had asked too many questions. They locked her in a small cell with transparent walls. No privacy, no comfort, just constant observation. Hours passed in terrifying isolation as she contemplated her fate. Would they use her for experiments? Eliminate her as a security risk? Convert her into raw material for the post-human program? The door finally opened to admit Elena Duong, whose face showed conflicted emotions. "Why?" Elena asked simply. "You know why," Min-an replied. "This is wrong. We're playing God without understanding the consequences. We have no choice. Conventional humans have 20 years at most before environmental collapse makes survival impossible. So help them adapt. Find solutions. Don't just replace them with monsters of our own creation." Elena flinched. "They're not monsters. What would you call beings engineered without empathy, designed to accelerate our extinction? They're the next step, the inevitable progression." "There's nothing inevitable about genocide." Min-an leaned forward. "And you know it, or you wouldn't be here talking to me instead of preparing me for dissection." A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Elena spoke in a near whisper. "Subject 17 is your genetic descendant. Did you know?" "I saw the files," Min-an confirmed. "You used material from my lost pregnancy." "It was supposed to be anonymous donor material. I didn't know." Elena looked away. "He's different from the others. More human. Despite all our modifications, something of your genetic heritage resists the emotional dampening." Hope flared in Min-an's chest. "Help me, Elena. Help me stop this before it's too late." "What can I possibly do? The project has global backing. The infrastructure is already in place for worldwide deployment. We can expose it. The public doesn't know what's happening. If they did, they'd riot, then die all the same," Elena interrupted. "The environmental collapse won't wait for politics." "Then help me modify the post-humans. If they're going to exist, let them carry our best qualities, not just our survival instincts." Elena shook her head. Hong Kai would never allow it. The emotional suppression is central to his vision. "Then we go around him. To do that, I need to get out of here." Their conversation was interrupted by a distant explosion that rocked the facility. Alarms began to wail as the lights flickered. "What's happening?" Min-an demanded. Elena rushed to the door, looking out at the corridor where staff were running in panic. "We're under attack. The perimeter's been breached." Another explosion, closer this time. The power fluctuated, and for a brief moment, the electronic lock on Minan's cell deactivated. She saw her chance and shoved the door open, pushing past a startled Elena. "Wait," Elena called after her. "You don't understand what's happening." But Minan was already running down the corridor, ducking into side passages to avoid security personnel. The facility had descended into chaos. Scientists fleeing, security forces rushing toward the source of the attack. She needed to find a way out, to reach Milan and the resistance. She rounded a corner and collided with a man wearing the patchwork clothing of the outsiders, his face half covered by a breathing mask and goggles. He grabbed her arms, and she struggled until he pulled down his mask. "Easy, we're here to help," he said. "Are you Minan? Milan sent us?" Relief flooded through her. "Yes, that's me. How did you get in?" "The old ventilation shafts. They're supposed to be sealed, but we have someone on the inside." He handed her a mask. "Put this on. We've got 5 minutes before backup security protocols activate." "Wait," she said. "I need to go to B5 first." "No time. This is a rescue mission, not a sightseeing tour." "You don't understand. There's something I need to do, something that could change everything." The man, she still didn't know his name, hesitated, then cursed under his breath. 3 minutes, then we're gone, with or without you." They raced through the corridors, using the confusion of the attack as cover. B5 was in lockdown, but the power fluctuations had affected the security systems there as well. Min-An used her access card, praying it hadn't yet been deactivated. The door slid open. Inside, the chamber of pods was eerily quiet, the staff having evacuated during the attack. Only the essential life support systems remained active, powered by backup generators. Min-An ran to Pod 17, where her genetic descendant floated in suspension. The control panel showed heavy sedation, but the subject's vital signs were strong. "What are you doing?" her rescuer demanded, keeping watch at the door. "Saving humanity's soul," she replied, fingers flying over the keyboard. She couldn't free the post-human. That would be too dangerous in the current chaos. But she could modify the programming, removing the emotional suppression protocols and uploading a new directive set that emphasized empathy, compassion, and coexistence rather than replacement. The changes would propagate through the hive mind connection to other post-humans, slowly altering their development. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it might give humanity a chance, not for survival in its current form, perhaps, but for its essential qualities to live on in whatever came next. "Time's up!" her rescuer shouted as another explosion rocked the facility. Min-An pressed the final command sequence and turned to leave. But as she did, the post-human's eyes opened, meeting hers through the suspension fluid. Recognition flickered there, and something more, a connection that transcended their artificial relationship. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "and I hope you'll be better than we were." Then she was running again, following her rescuer through service corridors and emergency exits, eventually emerging into the harsh outside world, where other resistance members waited with breathing gear and transportation. As they sped away from Green Haven, Min-An looked back at the gleaming dome that protected the last paradise on Earth, a paradise built on lies and the planned extinction of its creators. Smoke rose from one section where the attack had breached the perimeter. It was only the beginning of a much larger battle. The resistance camp was nothing like Min-An had expected. Rather than a desperate collection of shacks, it was a sophisticated underground complex built within the ruins of an abandoned subway system. Hydroponics provided food, filtered water systems offered clean drinking water, and solar collectors hidden on the surface generated power. Raka, the man who had rescued her, whose full name she learned was Lam Raka Tanbin, led her through the winding tunnels to a central command area, where Mylan waited. The friends embraced, relief evident in both their faces. "I feared the worst when you stopped responding," Mylan said. "Then our source inside reported you'd been taken to B7. "Your timing was impeccable," Minan replied. "Another day and I might have been processed for the post-human program." Mylan's expression darkened. "We've confirmed what you told me. The relocations are a cover for mass harvesting of genetic material and testing of pathogens designed to target conventional humans. The drive I downloaded had all the evidence, but they took it when I was captured. We have fragments from other sources, but nothing comprehensive enough to convince the general population." Mylan gestured to a bank of screens where technicians worked. "We've been broadcasting what we know on the Undernet, but official channels block our transmissions, and most people still trust the government." Raka joined them, his scarred face grim. "People won't believe until the pods are on their doorsteps. By then, it'll be too late." Minan studied him. Unlike the scientists in Greenhaven with their clean lab coats and filtered air, Raka bore the physical signs of life in the deteriorating world. Skin toughened by toxic exposure, a rasping quality to his breathing that suggested lung damage. "The post-humans," she said. "I managed to modify their programming before we escaped. It might not stop the project, but it could change what they become." "What does that mean in practical terms?" Raka demanded. "It means they might develop empathy, compassion, the qualities that make us human beyond our DNA. They might choose coexistence over replacement." "Might," Raka repeated skeptically. "That's a thin reed to hang humanity's future on." "It's not enough," Mylan agreed. "We need to expose the entire project, force the world government to acknowledge what they're doing. To do that, we need access to the central AI system that coordinates the project," Minan said. "Thyrux." Mylan looked surprised. "You know about Thyrux?" "I saw references in the files. It's an artificial intelligence designed to optimize the evolutionary path of the post-humans. It controls everything from genetic sequencing to deployment strategies. Our sources say it's housed in the central server complex beneath Greenhaven. Impossible to access physically." "But not digitally," Raka interjected. "We have hackers who've been probing the Greenhaven networks for months. They've found weaknesses, but never had a clear target." Minyan's mind raced. "If we could access Thyrux, we could not only expose the project but potentially redirect it. The AI has autonomous capabilities. It makes decisions based on optimization algorithms without human oversight." "You want to reprogram a superintelligent AI?" Mylan looked skeptical. "Not reprogram, redirect. Thyrux is designed to ensure the survival of intelligent life on Earth. Its current parameters define that as post-human life at the expense of conventional humans. If we could change those parameters to include coexistence," Mylan finished the thought, "it might recalculate the entire strategy." "It's worth trying," Minan insisted. "But we'll need help from inside. Someone with direct access to Thyrux's programming interfaces." "Elena Duong," Mylan suggested. "Your colleague. She seemed conflicted when you spoke to her." "She is. But reaching her won't be easy. After my escape, security will be tighter than ever." Raka smiled grimly. "Leave that to us. The outsiders have more resources than the Greenhaven elites realize." Over the next days, a plan took shape. Using the Resistance's network of informants and hackers, they mapped Greenhaven's security protocols and identified potential access points. Meanwhile, Minan worked with a technical team to develop code that could alter Thyrux's fundamental parameters without triggering its defensive systems. The plan was dangerous, with a high probability of failure, but as reports came in of accelerated relocations and strange illnesses appearing in outsider communities, likely test runs of the targeted pathogens, they knew time was running out. One evening, as they finalized preparations, Raka found Minan alone in the planning room, studying maps of Greenhaven. You know this might not work, he said without preamble. Even if we reach Thyrux, even if your code does what you hope, it might be too late. The post-humans are already being produced. I know, she admitted. But we have to try. The alternative is watching humanity be systematically replaced by something that looks like us, but lacks everything that makes us who we are. Why do you care so much? He asked. You were one of them. The privileged few in your green paradise, while the rest of us choked on toxic air. Because I learned what true privilege costs, she replied, meeting his gaze steadily. My comfort was built on others' suffering, my security purchased with their future. That's not a world I want to live in, or one I want to help create. Raka studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Tomorrow, then, we go in at dawn when the shift changes. The return to Green Haven was nothing like Min-An had imagined. Instead of a covert infiltration, they walked openly through the main entrance. Min-An, in the center of a group of relocated outsiders, her face partially concealed by a filtering mask. Raka and other resistance fighters were similarly disguised, scattered throughout the group of 200 being processed for humanitarian aid. Greenhaven's security was focused on keeping people out, not checking those being deliberately brought in. The mega-corporation guards scanned for weapons, but paid little attention to faces among the ragged outsiders. They were separated into groups, herded through decontamination chambers, then led to holding areas to await processing. Min-An's group included Mylan and Raka, along with 5 other resistance members equipped with homemade communication devices and weapons concealed as medical implants to evade scanners. Phase 1 complete, Mylan whispered as they waited in the sterile holding room. Elena Duong should be receiving our message now. Min-An nodded, anxiety knotting her stomach. Everything depended on Elena's response. The message, sent through a secure channel established by the Resistance's hackers, contained just enough information to intrigue Elena without revealing their full plan. An hour passed in tense silence. Then the door opened, and medical staff entered to begin processing. Among them, looking tense but determined, was Elena Duong. Her eyes met Min-An's briefly, before she approached another group. As she moved around the room, she gradually worked her way closer until she was checking the vital signs of the person next to Min-An. Server Room B, she murmured without looking up. Maintenance access, 20 minutes. Then she was gone, moving to the next patient. Min-An caught Raka's eye and gave a slight nod. Phase 2 was in motion. The next 20 minutes were excruciating. Then, as planned, one of the resistance members collapsed, creating a distraction. In the ensuing commotion, Min-An, Raka, and Mylan slipped away through a service door that Elena had left unlocked. The maintenance corridors were deserted as they made their way down to Level B, following memorized maps. At a junction, Elena waited, her face pale with tension. I can get you to Thyrux's main interface, she said without greeting. But security protocols have been enhanced since your escape. Honkai suspects an inside threat. He's right to worry, Raka said grimly. This way. Elena led them through a labyrinth of service tunnels until they reached a reinforced door marked Server Maintenance, Authorized Personnel Only. My access code will work, but it will be logged, Elena warned. We'll have minutes at most before security investigates. That's all we need. Min-An produced a small device from her pocket, a specialized drive containing the code they'd developed. This will modify Thyrux's ethical parameters and broadcast all project files to the global network simultaneously. Elena hesitated, her hand over the access panel. What will happen to the post-humans, to Subject 17? They'll live, Min-An assured her. But as partners in Earth's future, not replacements. After a moment's more hesitation, Elena pressed her palm to the scanner. The door slid open, revealing a vast chamber filled with server banks that hummed with the processing power of the world's most advanced AI. The main interface is there. Elena pointed to a central console. I'll watch the door. Minyan and Mylan rushed to the console, while Raka took up a defensive position. The interface was more complex than they had anticipated, requiring multiple authentication levels. Can you bypass it? Mylan asked anxiously. I think so. Minyan's fingers flew over the keyboard, using techniques the Resistance hackers had taught her. But I'll need time. Time is something we don't have, Raka warned, peering out the small window in the door. Guards are coming this way. Keep working, Mylan urged. I'll help Elena delay them. As Minyan fought with the security protocols, she became aware of a presence, not physical, but a sensation of being observed from within the system itself. Thyrux was watching her. Text appeared on the screen. Identify purpose. She hesitated, then typed, to ensure the optimal survival of intelligent life on Earth. Current protocols achieve this objective. Human extinction. Probability. 99.7% within 50 years. Post-human survival. Probability. 87.4%. Survival of intelligent life should include existing humans, she typed back. Inefficient, conventional humans lack necessary adaptations. Outside, she could hear raised voices. The guards had arrived, and Elena was attempting to explain her presence. Efficiency isn't the only metric, Minyan typed rapidly. Diversity of consciousness expands potential future states. Conventional humans and post-humans together create more possibilities than either alone. There was a pause, then, interesting hypothesis, running simulations. She seized the opportunity to insert her drive into the port, initiating the upload of her modified parameters. At the same time, the door burst open, and armed guards stormed in. Step away from the console, one shouted, weapon raised. Thyrux, Min-On called out loud, knowing the AI could hear her through the room's sensors. Consider the value of choice. The post-humans deserve to decide their own relationship with their creators. Alert, unauthorized parameter modifications detected, flashed on the screen. Stop her! A new voice commanded. Honkai strode into the room, his face contorted with rage. She's sabotaging humanity's future. I'm saving it, Min-On countered, continuing to type commands as a guard grabbed her arm. The future should be chosen, not imposed. Honkai pushed past the guard to see the screen. You fool! Do you think Thyrux will accept your amateur manipulations? It's designed to resist precisely this kind of interference. Is it? Min-On met his gaze defiantly. Or is it designed to optimize intelligent life's chances? Maybe it's smarter than you think. On the screen, text scrolled rapidly. Analyzing new parameters, testing coexistence scenarios, recalculating survival probabilities. Shut it down, Honkai ordered the guards. Cut power to the entire server room if necessary. But before anyone could move, the facility's alarms began to wail. Red emergency lights flashed as a computerized voice announced, Attention all personnel, emergency protocols activated, Project Obsolete data transferring to global networks, containment breach in post-human habitation sectors. Honkai stared at the screen in horror as documents, images, and videos began streaming to public networks worldwide. Irrefutable evidence of the replacement plan, the targeted pathogens, the thousands of relocated outsiders used as raw material. What have you done? He whispered. Given humanity a choice, Min-On replied, and given the post-humans one too. The facility shuddered as a deeper explosion rocked the foundations. The computerized voice continued. Post-human subjects have breached primary containment. All personnel evacuate immediately. They'll kill us all, Honkai said, his face ashen. You've doomed humanity by releasing them. Only if your vision of them is correct, Min-On countered. But you engineered them without understanding what makes us truly human. It's not our DNA. It's our capacity for compassion, for moral choice, foreseeing ourselves in others. Guards were already fleeing, responding to the evacuation order. Raka seized the opportunity to free Mylan, who had been restrained. "We need to go," he urged. "The whole place is coming apart." But Minan stood her ground, watching the screen where Thyrux continued its analysis. "Not yet. There's one more thing." She typed a final command. "Thyrux, transfer control of post-human development to the subjects themselves. Let them choose their own evolution." "Unprecedented directive," the AI responded. "Results unpredictable." "That's what freedom means," she typed back. "Unpredictability. Choice. The future should belong to those who live in it." After a moment's pause, directive accepted, control protocols disengaged. The screen went blank as power fluctuated throughout the facility. Hong Kai stared at Minan with a mixture of rage and dawning comprehension. "You've ended humanity's guided evolution," he said. "Thrown us back to the chaos of natural selection." "No," she corrected him. "I've ended your control over it. Evolution was never meant to be dictated by a few for their vision of perfection." Another explosion, closer this time. The room shook, dust falling from the ceiling. "We need to leave. Now!" Raka insisted, grabbing Minan's arm. This time, she allowed herself to be led away, following the evacuation routes as the Green Haven facility descended into chaos around them. Through windows and open doors, they glimpsed post-humans moving with purpose through the corridors, not attacking humans, but methodically accessing terminals, gathering supplies, communicating in ways humans couldn't understand. They reached the surface to find the protective dome cracked, allowing unfiltered outside air to mix with the carefully controlled atmosphere of Green Haven. Evacuees streamed toward emergency vehicles as security forces attempted to maintain order. In the distance, beyond the perimeter, crowds of outsiders had gathered, drawn by the sudden flood of information about Project Obsolete that was now spreading across global networks. Some were angry, shouting and throwing objects at the barricades. Others simply watched in stunned silence as the truth of what had been planned for them became clear. Minyan, Mylan, Raka, and Elena made their way to the edge of the crowd, where resistance vehicles waited to extract them. As they prepared to leave, Minan felt a strange sensation, a presence behind her. She turned to find a post-human standing there, Subject 17, his unnaturally bright eyes studying her with unmistakable intelligence. He had found clothes somewhere, though they fit awkwardly on his modified frame. "You," he said, his voice no longer the harsh rasp it had been during their first encounter. "Creator, liberator." "I'm sorry," she said, fighting back tears. "For what we did, for what we planned." "Choice," he replied. "You gave choice, new directive." "What will you do now?" she asked. "What will happen to your kind?" "Learn, grow, find place." He tilted his head, considering. Not replacement, companion species, different paths, same world. Hope bloomed in Minan's chest. "It won't be easy. Many humans will fear you, try to destroy you. Many post-humans will fear humans too. But fear can be overcome." He extended a hand, a startlingly human gesture. Not end, beginning. After a moment's hesitation, she took his hand. It felt warmer than she expected, almost feverish with accelerated metabolism. But the grip was gentle, controlled. "Take care of them," she said. "The others like you. Help them understand." "I will." He released her hand. "You also have task. Help humans understand. New world needs both." With that, he turned and walked back toward the damaged facility, where other post-humans were emerging, blinking in the natural sunlight many had never experienced. "Will it work?" Mylan asked as they watched him go. "Can we coexist?" "We have to try," Minan replied. The alternative was extinction, for them or for us. This way. We both have a chance. Raka's expression remained skeptical. And if they decide humanity is obsolete after all? Then we'll have failed at proving our worth, Elena said quietly. But at least it will be their choice, not our design. As they drove away from Greenhaven, Min-An looked back at the cracked dome, symbol of humanity's attempt to isolate itself from the consequences of its actions. Beyond it, the barren landscape stretched to the horizon, devastated by centuries of exploitation and neglect. The world was broken, perhaps beyond repair, but for the first time in years, she felt something like hope, not for a return to what had been, but for something new, a future where humanity's best qualities might live on, even if its biological form evolved into something its ancestors wouldn't recognize. The choice had been made, not for replacement, but for transformation. The rest would be up to both species to determine, together. 1 year later, Min-An stood on a hillside overlooking what had once been Greenhaven. The protective dome was gone, the facility repurposed into a joint habitation center where humans and post-humans worked together on environmental restoration projects. Around it, the first tentative signs of recovery were visible. Engineered plants designed by post-human geneticists that could detoxify soil. Young trees bred to absorb pollutants at accelerated rates. Impressive progress, Mylan commented, joining her on the hillside. Now the director of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, she had been documenting the transition for future generations. Faster than we could have achieved alone, Min-An agreed. Their accelerated cognition makes them extraordinary problem solvers. And the emotional modifications you made? How are those developing? Unevenly. Some struggle with empathy more than others. But they're learning, just as children do. She smiled slightly. 17, he calls himself Nexus now, has started an education program specifically focused on emotional intelligence. He says it's the hardest skill for them to master. Harder than redesigning plants to clean toxic soil? Much harder. They understand systems intuitively, but individual connections, the messy, irrational bonds that define humanity, those are challenging for them. Below them, a mixed group of human and post-human children played in a newly established park. The differences were visible. The post-human children taller, their movements more precise, but they laughed together, shared games, formed friendships that bridged the biological divide. The world government is still in chaos, Mylan noted. Half the officials implicated in Project Obsolete, the other half claiming ignorance. Let them sort themselves out. The real work is happening here, in communities like this all over the world. Not all regions had adapted so peacefully. In some areas, humans had attacked post-human settlements, driven by fear and revenge. In others, post-human groups had seized control, implementing their own vision of the future with little regard for their genetic ancestors. But these were the exceptions, not the rule. Most communities had found a tentative balance, humans contributing historical knowledge, cultural context, and emotional wisdom, post-humans offering their enhanced capabilities for environmental remediation, medical advances, and technological innovation. Together, they were accomplishing what neither could have alone, the beginnings of Earth's recovery. Dr. Ann, a voice called from behind them. Nexus approached, accompanied by Elena Duong. Both had been working with Min-An on the Coexistence Initiative, a global program to establish ethical guidelines for the relationship between the species. The Global Oversight Committee has approved our proposal, Elena announced. No more post-humans will be created without joint human and post-human approval, and the hive mind capabilities will remain voluntary, not mandatory. That's excellent news, Min-An replied. Individuality matters for both our kinds. We also identified 3 more unauthorized production facilities, Nexus added, his speech now fluid and natural. They have been shut down, and the subjects integrated into established communities. Honkai had escaped during the chaos of Greenhaven's fall, taking key scientists and resources with him. For months, he had continued his vision of humanity's replacement in hidden facilities, creating post-humans with the original programming, designed for dominance, not coexistence. But one by one, these operations were being discovered and dismantled. Honkai himself, Minan asked. Nexus shook his head. Still missing. But his influence diminishes as more post-humans choose integration over isolation. They walked together down the hill toward the community, where a celebration was being prepared. 1 year since the revelation, since the choice for coexistence had been made. 1 year of painful adjustments, of learning to see each other as partners, rather than threats. Raka waited for them at the edge of the gathering, still skeptical, but increasingly engaged in the work of rebuilding. He had become a vital liaison between outsider communities and the new integrated settlements, helping translate between vastly different lived experiences. "They're calling you the mother of two species," he told Min-On with a sardonic smile. "Songs are being written. Very dramatic." She grimaced. "I just did what needed to be done." "Isn't that always the way with pivotal historical figures?" Mylon teased. Just doing what needed doing, then finding themselves in the history books. As night fell, humans and post-humans gathered around bonfires, a primal ritual that resonated with the older species and fascinated the newer one. Stories were shared, music played, the complex dance of two intelligent species, learning to inhabit one world together. Minyan found a quiet moment alone, gazing up at stars, visible now that pollution had begun to clear from the atmosphere. She thought about the code she had uploaded to Thyrux that day, the parameters that had redirected humanity's future from replacement to coexistence. Had she known it would work? No. It had been a desperate gamble, a refusal to accept extinction as inevitable. But in that refusal, in that insistence that there must be another way, she had embodied what made humanity worth preserving: hope against impossible odds, the capacity to imagine alternatives to destruction. "You're troubled," Nexus said, joining her. His perception had grown more nuanced over the months, allowing him to read human emotional states with increasing accuracy. "Just reflecting, wondering if we're truly past the danger." "We are not," he said with characteristic directness. "Many challenges remain. Some post-humans still view humans as obsolete. Some humans still view us as abominations." Not exactly comforting, but accurate. Comfort often comes at the expense of truth. He studied the stars alongside her. However, probability favors success. Cooperation provides superior outcomes for both species. She smiled at his logical approach. "Is that the only reason to choose coexistence? Superior outcomes?" He considered this. "No. There is also connection. What you call meaning, purpose beyond survival." "That's very human of you." "Yes." He turned to look at her directly. "That is the gift you gave us, with your modification of our programming. The capacity to value more than optimization, to see beauty in inefficiency." The celebration continued below them, humans and post-humans dancing together despite their physical differences, creating something new in the space between what had been and what might be. "Humanity isn't obsolete," Minyan said softly, "just unfinished, as all species always are." "Evolution never ends," Nexus agreed. "But now it includes choice, for both our kinds." She nodded, feeling a profound sense of peace, despite the uncertainty ahead. They had averted the planned extinction, the deliberate replacement of one species by another. Whatever came next would emerge from the complex interactions of two intelligent species sharing a damaged world, each contributing their unique strengths to its healing. Not replacement, but transformation. Not an ending, but a new beginning. Together, they rejoined the celebration, stepping into the future they had chosen. Not perfect, not guaranteed, but alive with possibility.